The stench of rust and stale blood filled the underground abandoned rail system as Thorne's final breath rattled in the damp air. He lay crumpled on the tracks, a broken knot of flesh and ambition, his eyes still wide with the dawning horror of my presence. There had been no pleas, no dramatic confessions, only a choked gurgle as my hand, calloused from the years of silent dominion, tightened around his throat. It wasn't vengeance, it was maintenance. The brutal, necessary work of ensuring every cog in my sprawling machine turned precisely as intended. The microchips clutched in his dead hand were a stark reminder that even the smallest deviation of my network demanded absolute finality. I left him there, a new piece of debris in the mainland's forgotten arteries, knowing the rats would pick him clean long before anyone stumbled upon his meager remains. The return journey through the subterranean labyrinth was swift, my footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence broken only by the drip of unseen water and the scuttling of the omnipresent, fearless vermin. The underground abandoned rail systems were more than just routes. They were the hidden, necrotic veins of the city, flowing with the dark lifeblood of my empire. They mirrored my own existence, unseen, vital, thriving in the shadows beneath Falky's suffocating control. As I emerged into the grim twilight of the mainland surface, the pervasive hum of Falky's subliminal tones immediately assaulted my senses, a dull pressure behind my eyes, a constant reminder of the psychological warfare waged daily on this dying world. The contrast was jarring, a quick, cold dunk from one kind of hell into another. Back in my apartment, the air still tasted of stale synth smoke and quiet desperation. I shed the grimy overcoat, its pockets lighter now of the silenced pistol, and turned immediately to the chest. The hum of its internal mechanism was a private, soothing counterpoint to the city's ceaseless drone. I slipped through, leaving Father Malachi and his dead traitor behind, entering the bunker's pristine, ordered calm. The transition was immediate, a breath of pure, recycled air, and drowning in the mainland's miasma. Nadine was a statue of perfect stillness at the main console, her luminescent skin a stark contrast to the muted steel. Her re-engineered mind, a marvel of bioengineering, had already registered my presence, my intent. Thorne dealt with, confirmed zero compromise to primary network, I stated, my voice flat, already moving beyond the recent unpleasantness. Began final preparations for island transit, all logistical data to be transferred to mobile unit, full encryption protocols. Nadine's synthesized whisper responded, devoid of emotion, yet radiating competence. Acknowledged, Master. Transit vector optimized. Meteorological data indicates minimal disturbance for offshore passage. Her efficiency was a constant source of cold satisfaction. She anticipated my needs before I voiced them, a perfect extension of my will, unburdened by the flaws of human emotion or the corruptibility of the flesh. Our relationship was one of absolute control and unwavering devotion, a chilling symbiosis that allowed me to operate with unparalleled precision. While mainland scientists coveted her unique physiology, seeking to dissect and replicate her, they would never grasp the true essence of Nadine's power, her complete, silent obedience. She was irreplaceable in the very heart of my hidden dominion. My preparations within the bunker were meticulous, spanning the next few hours of subjective time. I reviewed satellite feeds of the islands, analyzing every known harbor, every hidden cove, every precarious landing strip. The fentanyl shipment was not merely cargo, it was a declaration, a stake driven into the heart of a territory ripe for my particular brand of ruthless exploitation. I cross-referenced shipping manifests against real-time maritime traffic, looking for anomalies, for the subtle signatures of Falky's distant surveillance or rival interests. The sheer scale of the trafficking operation was vast, intricate, a delicate ballet of corruption and coercion. Every gram, every package represented a life ruined, a family broken, a cog in the mechanism of this dying world that I could now control. Deployed drone scouts to perimeter of landing zone Beta 4, standard sweep for unscheduled presences. Priority, thermal signatures, electromagnetic anomalies. My voice was crisp, cutting through the bunker's silence, Nadine's console shimmered with new data, the virtual drones already humming into existence, preparing for their atmospheric launch from the bunker's hidden bays. She was tireless, unwavering, a perfect instrument of my will. Leaving the bunker was always a psychological transition. The portal's hum faded, and the familiar, clinging dampness of my apartment wrapped around me like a shroud. The mainland's oppression was immediate, a heavy weight on my shoulders, a constant thrum in the air. I had chosen my point of departure from the mainland with care, a desolate and forgotten dockyard known only to the truly desperate and the utterly corrupt. It was here, amidst the skeletal remains of forgotten ships and the pervasive stench of brackish water, that I would board the vessel. The boat, the Whisper, was a low-slung, utilitarian craft painted a dull, light-absorbing gray, its engine a quiet, efficient thrum beneath the deck. Its crew, 3 gaunt, silent men, were loyal only to the highest bidder, and my bid was always the highest, insured by both coin and the silent promise of retribution for any deviation. There was no friendly banter, no unnecessary conversation, only the cold understanding of purpose. Cargo secured? I asked the captain, a grizzly man with eyes like chipped flint. He nodded, his face a roadmap of hard living. On board, sealed, no incidents. His voice was a low rasp, accustomed to secrecy. The departure was a shadow's farewell. We slipped away from the mainland's choking embrace under the cover of a thick industrial fog that clung to the water like a malignant spirit. The distant glow of Falky's omnipresent surveillance lights was quickly swallowed by the gloom. Out on the open sea, the vast, churning expanse felt like a temporary reprieve, a fleeting moment of freedom before the inevitable plunge back into the depths of human depravity. The journey was long, punctuated by the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull and the dull thrum of the engines. My mind, however, never rested. It was a constant churn of psychological calculations. I rehearsed every contingency. Interception by Falky's distant maritime patrols, who occasionally dared to extend their reach beyond the mainland's immediate perimeter. Raids by opportunistic pirates, more desperate than cunning. Betrayal by the crew, a constant, nagging possibility that I guarded against with quiet, lethal vigilance. Each scenario was dissected, analyzed, and countered, my mind racing through layers of probabilities, mapping out the most brutal and efficient response. The fentanyl shipment was more than just a means to an end. It was a symbol of control. It spread across the mainland and beyond, fueled the very despair that Falky's regime exploited. It was a poison that corroded the will to resist, a subtle form of control, not unlike the subliminal tones that hummed through the city's air. I supplied the chains, and others forged them. It was a brutal, elegant system, and I, the Lord of Solitude, was at its cold, unfeeling heart. My thoughts occasionally drifted to Dudael, the true underworld, the crucible that had forged me. The memory of that agonizing departure, the profound suffering and the chilling revelations lingered like a phantom limb. It was there that I had shed my former self, there that I had been remade, given the capabilities that allowed me to operate as a demigod in this fractured world. The abilities were not for flashy displays of power, but for precision, for control, for an unparalleled understanding of manipulation and consequence. It was a psychological inheritance etched into my very being. Hours bled into a timeless expanse of gray sea and shifting sky. The Whisper cut through the waves, a silent predator moving towards its prey. The air grew warmer, humid, carrying the faint, sweet scent of distant jungle. The islands were drawing near. The approach was as clandestine as our departure. We navigated through a treacherous maze of coral reefs and hidden channels, known only to the most experienced smugglers. The island itself rose from the sea like a jagged, verdant beast, its shores lined with dense, tangled mangroves. This was no paradise. It was a different kind of hell, one of desperate men and forgotten laws. The raw, untamed nature here was a stark contrast to the mainland's decaying, engineered oppression. Here, chaos reigned, a fertile ground for those who knew how to plant seeds of order through fear. We docked in a secluded cove, shrouded by thick vegetation. The air was heavy with the smell of salt, damp earth, and something else. The faint metallic tang of human desperation. Figures emerged from the shadows of the trees, grim, silent men with eyes that held too much knowledge of violence. These were my contacts, the local operatives who managed the island's entry points, the disposable hands that would ensure the fentanyl moved seamlessly from sea to shore. Their leader, a man named Calderon, his face etched with hard lines and suspicious eyes, stepped forward. He was a product of the islands, lean and wiry, his loyalty as fleeting as the sea breeze. Malachi, he grunted, his voice rough, scanning the vessel. The cargo. As agreed, I replied, my voice a low, even tone that carried more weight than any shout. Undisturbed, secure. I stepped onto the rickety wooden pier, the wood groaning beneath my weight. My payment, Calderon, and your men will begin immediate transfer, no delays. Calderon's eyes flickered, calculating. He knew the terms. He knew the consequences of hesitation. His men, gaunt and watchful, began to stir, moving towards the whisper's stern. This was the moment of truth, where words became actions, where trust was measured in the cold weight of illicit goods. The transfer of the fentanyl shipment was an agonizingly slow dance of danger and precision. Crates, heavy with their toxic payload, were unceremoniously heavied from the vessel's hold onto the damp earth of the cove. Each thud resonated not just through the ground, but through the precarious balance of power. My eyes, hardened by the grim realities of trafficking, missed nothing. Every moment, every twitch of a muscle, every nervous glance among Calderon's men was noted, analyzed. I knew their desperation. I knew their capacity for betrayal. It was the same song played on a different instrument, but the melody was familiar. I'd already sent out preliminary communications via Nadine's earlier, confirming the presence of Calderon's network on the islands. The reach was substantial, the methods crude but effective. This was the entry point, the brutal reality of my expansion. The mainland was a tightly controlled cage. The islands were a wild, untamed jungle, where new rules had to be forged in blood and fear. Calderon produced a battered data pad, its screen flickering. The payment verified. His grudging nod was the closest I would get to acknowledgement of my authority. It was enough. Excellent, I said, my gaze sweeping over his men, who were now diligently moving the last of the crates. My presence alone, my reputation, was a formidable weapon. They knew the fate of men who crossed me, a fate far worse than anything Falky could concoct. With the fentanyl secured, a precarious new foothold was established. The scent of success mingled with the damp earth and the subtle, lingering metallic tang of human suffering that clung to the cargo. I had secured the delivery, yes, but this was only the first step. The islands were a new chessboard, and the pieces were still shifting. My presence here would ensure they shifted precisely as I intended. I was not a king here, not yet, but I was a force, a ruthless executor, a vital cog in the greater, unseen machinery of this decaying world. And the game, stripped down to its brutal essentials, had just begun.